Hello and welcome back. I'm Tyler Edlin, and in this episode, we'll be talking about some strategies for painting grass. Alright, so a few episodes back, a viewer that I believe is named Jay Chan asked about painting grass. And I particularly wanted to talk about that this month or week because I do see that come up a lot, and particularly even within the brush sauce community, which I have linked below. So first, let's just take a look at some actual photo references of grass, make some observations. We'll look at some paintings and some different approaches in terms of kind of solving that problem. All right, so up here on screen, I have I typed in grassy plains, just some general looking things. Now, if we notice across any of these photos, since it is photography, it has very high dense detail. Unless the photographer is using some sort of lens and aperture settings that is going to soften or affect the depth of field, it's going to all be fairly sharp and crisp. And if anyone's ever painted or had to draw on grass, from observation, that's a lot of work to do. It is just so detailed. It is so precise. Artistically, what I like to do is kind of approach the photo reference. You just kind of squint at the scenes and look for major forms and edges. This is all within regards to simplification. So if we take something like, so I'm taking this photograph to illustrate this point, and a good way of doing this is I run just some Photoshop filters on this to show you guys. It gives it the same effect of kind of just squinting at it and looking for all the major forms. See, there's subtle groupings of values and hue shifts that make kind of digesting the whole scene a little bit easier. And that's what usually as artists like to do, is they like to interpret nature, simplify, embellish, and kind of just put their own spin on things. And that is what I like to do as well. It's just way too much to go in and paint lots and lots of details. So really the best thing we can do is art direct reality and filter, and interpret what we see and perceive. So here's some other examples of various paintings, and with different styles and purposes as well. A lot of them I do like our traditional based stuff, and just so we can look, it very much has that same principle that we just talked about, simplifying and just kind of grouping different colors and areas. There's not a lot of exact perfect detail within these, and this is exactly how I like to kind of paint. This here is, I believe, in oil painting. As we can see, there's lots of subtle color varieties within this, but overall it has a fairly uniform kind of base, and just applying that brush stroke and brushwork over it can go a long way in terms of implying a full kind of fertile lawn here. The wrong way to do it, of course, is just to leave something super blank and simple, and that would look like this, right? If we a little bit more amateurish way to approach it. Let's say if we have all the grass here, and if we were to fill it like with one color, you would have something that looks like this. See, very flat, very lifeless. There's nothing to it. Though, if you stand back and really look at it, it does have that really strong graphic read. So I think our goal when painting grass and any kind of foliage is to keep it fairly simple, but keep the variety there, and have it be relatively similar in terms of the value areas, unless you're trying to group something differently, and working on brush strokes to simplify. Now, by contrast, if we look at something like this, which was from The Secret World of Arrietty, which was an animation, like hand-painted background for a movie, the detail does have to be a little bit more exact and precise in a lot of areas, since it'll be a still and be on camera screen for who knows how long exactly. But as we can see here, that there is not very much detail within any of the shadowy areas, but all the shapes are a lot sharper, a lot more crisp than something kind of done with these oils. So alright, so I have this scene kind of in the works, and I thought this is the best way to show you guys in real time, just a few different techniques. So I'm going to just jump around and show you some various approaches. So I haven't done much at all of this area here, and as we look at a lot of these paintings, what I like to do is generally just lay in a base with any kind of brush. It could have texture. It's probably not a completely flat airbrush. Those can yield a little bit more of a stiff result. So I want to show that the light is hitting this grass, right? And so in the shadow, in the shade, will be a lot cooler. So I have that transition from the warm green to the cool green. And I'd work on that pretty soon. So if I have this area, and I know originally I did have a lot of these plants on a lot of layers. This is all kind of on one layer at this point. That is fine. So I'll even cover up some of what I had there before. All right, so we have that that base coat. That still may not be the right temperature I'll use or go with in the end, but we'll go with it for now. And then usually what I like to do over this is apply some secondary details or groupings. This is where having an assortment of kind of custom brushes can really save you on some time and anxiety. So if I wanted to paint in some of the shadow areas now and paint some groups, what I do is make like a general selection like this. And let's say this bush is casting a shadow in here. I can just go and select, something kind of like that to imply that shadow. I just need something a little bit cooler, and this is that break in terms of making the clumps of grass as we observed before. And I could do the same kind of going up there. See, and that kind of created a little bit of a line. If I wanted to make it feel a little bit more natural now, what I like to do is just grab another kind of grass brush, and you pick the highlight area or color, right? And watch me zoom in. And we want to cover that straight line because that doesn't feel that natural. So then we can kind of graze over it like that. So see, we created that difference, and it looks like a very, very thin, dense area. And again, so if I wanted to create the hint of some grass kind of peeking up from behind some of these ruins here, I can just make a selection and just kind of glaze in over with one of my custom brushes. Now these are available anywhere. Well, not my brushes specifically, but if you just type in grass brushes or natural media brushes into Google, you get lots of things. So see, then we can just kind of, once the foundation is here and the transition with the forms, we can just go in and lightly kind of touch upon some of these areas to kind of increase that density without really doing that much work. We don't want to use the brush kind of like this. That makes it really noisy and honestly a bit ugly. So we don't want to do that. We want to gingerly kind of use any kind of these special brushes because it will be really obvious which ones we used, and the technique kind of ultimately falls flat. The other thing I'm doing as well here is, again, making these groups of areas. So giving that feeling that things are very kind of clumpy over here, and they're really kind of thick foliage. So I can pick a value, I can lay in a little bit of that foundation, and I have, the important thing is having these shadow areas or areas of implied shadow for the grouping of these. So sometimes I just make a new layer. So once the shadow areas are established, I can go over it like this, or like this. But the trick is to only use like 1 to 2 different values. And that really kind of helps. See, this is really, really dense over here. I don't know ultimately if I like it that much. It's okay. Now, if I wanted to give the idea of thicker kind of grass, or maybe increase the depth, what I could do is pick a really dark shadow color and kind of glaze over the whole little area like this, right? So very, very dark in its shadow now. And go back and pick like the same type of brush, something with like a bit of scattering, and just kind of go over that with a little bit of a lighter color, something that's just a bit cooler, like this. So a little trial and error, and now I can get some of these. I do it on its own layer so I can edit it easily after. I can go in and try to use this brush in an efficient way to give that idea that there's a lot of dense foliage, and then just kind of I'd teeter that off, and I'd have to erase this and go back and ultimately edit it a bit so it doesn't look like I just used one brush. That is the hardest part when using these kind of gimmicky or trick brushes, is to make it look like you didn't. So use them with some caution. It's another thing. And then afterwards, what I do is, you can do, of course, the other way to paint grass is to go back in individually and outright just paint, some individual blades going in there. Just use a hard, crisp brush with the shape dynamics turned on, so you can do thick to thin. I could do it just like I did the other ones, right? Just make a quick selection so I can start from the same spot, and I can quickly kind of graze these up like that, so that it will have a really hands-on feeling, and helps break up some of the monotony that the texture brushes can kind of give. So sometimes, I could pick a little bit of this color, kind of go in there like that, just to help make it feel as natural and effortless, even though we know we put a lot of work into it. We want to often give the feeling that we didn't put a lot of work in, something like that. And then of course you can go back, and if you have like some pinks and whatever, you could always add the flowers on top of that layer, and then the stems and stuff. So layer by layer you can build these sort of scenes up. So like I did over here, what I would want to do first is generally kind of pick the shadowy tone. I usually like to pick some kind of brush that can help me make these shadows kind of feel a little bit tangible there. So they have like some edge dynamics like this, right? They're not all made with really lazy brush marks. So that's what I'm trying to do, is make it have this dynamic sense of edge and flow to it. And the point is, like, these are basically all the occlusion shadows, things where there's just no light at all. And I generally like to start, most of the time in these really kind of dark areas and the smaller recesses, so then you can paint the light right over them. I don't know, furloughs, whatever you want to kind of call them, tufts, to give it that real high density. We're just applying everything, kind of jumping around, and then like I did over there, I would just grab like an airbrush, right? Grab the shadow, soften a lot of this, just to reduce some of the noise, like that, and then I'll go over that even with one lighter pass of extra noise here. So, and again, if I wanted to hide all this like I did over there, after I shadow that in, I can go back and add a few different leaves kind of over it, like so, just like I did on the other side, and have these kind of transition, right into the planes up here. I just dot these around, kind of connecting the whole area, and then I'd go back to using that individual brush again once more. When you step back and look at it, it really does feel like this highly dense area of foliage. So I hope this kind of helped you guys out. There's so many different ways to approach grass. This is only kind of my techniques and my observations, so take it with a grain of salt, as I'd always like to advise. And good luck painting grass. Let me know if you enjoyed this. And let me know what you guys want to see in featured in few episodes. I do have a list going, and I'm going to, as I do have time, I try to cover everybody's questions, and let's just talk about art and enjoy and share techniques. Take care. Thank you for watching my video. If you found it helpful, please leave me a like. If you want to help me out, please share it with your friends. I'm also on Facebook, where I have a subscribe button where you can get newsletters and discount info. I'm also on Twitter, where I update and post images almost regularly. If you want a chance to mingle and meet other like-minded individuals such as yourself, join the Brushtosh community, free and open to anyone, of course through the Google+. And finally, if you'd like to inquire about my mentorship program, head over to tyleredlinart.com, click on the mentorship tab, scroll through, read over some of the guidelines, and feel free to check out several of my testimonial videos on my YouTube channel itself.